I get questions from students asking, oh, which privacy certification would you advise, or what are your thoughts on the privacy certification? Hello and welcome back to Privacy Professional Training. My name is Fumi Olabi and I'm the founder. The purpose of Privacy Professional Training is to help other privacy pros with their privacy certification. Today's video, we're going to be talking about how I choose which privacy certification to take next. So for anybody that's brand new, I've currently taken 6 privacy certifications. I do one a year. I wanted to talk a bit about factors that influence which privacy certification I'm going to take. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is I get a couple of questions from some students, and thank you everybody that has sent me an email. I get questions from students asking, oh, which privacy certification would you advise, or what are your thoughts on the privacy certification? So I take one a year, and I'll tell you a couple factors that I think about, and we'll go through every year. I had to write them down, so if I look down, I've got notes. I've written down what my thought process was for taking these certs in the order that they've been taken. And so, yeah, I do have a thought process. The 2 most influential things that influence which privacy cert I'm going to study for is, 1, what type of inquiries am I getting client-wise? Like, what type of questions are businesses asking? That's the first influence. The second influence is geographical landscape. What are businesses trying to accomplish in that year? That influences what I'm doing. So the first question is, what am I getting a lot of questions about from clients? And 2, what's happening geographically? And we're not just talking about the United States, because it never has just been about the United States. Why? Because the manner in which the privacy legislation is drafted generally gives many privacy legislations extraterritorial effect, meaning that the effect of the law is not exclusive to one geography. If we look at the GDPR, for example, we know that the GDPR, the language in the GDPR, expands outside of just the European Union. If businesses in the United States, China, Japan, if they're processing personal data belonging to EU residents, then the GDPR has that extraterritorial effect on them. So let's get into the video and how I choose what factors influence, and maybe we'll go a bit through history and some of the questions I was getting at the time and why I picked these certs. So I told you guys that the first cert that I took was the CIPPUS. It's offered by IAPP, which is the International Association of Privacy Professionals. I took this in December 2019. Now, I don't have months for the rest of them, but I'll try and give you like a general timeline. If you're interested, I've done plenty of videos that you guys can check out that show exactly when I took the exams, but I'm just going to give you the year unless I truly remember the month. So I took the CIPPUS December 2019. The reason I took this one first is because I am a US-based lawyer, and so this was the first time that I was learning about the privacy landscape. Prior to this, I had no idea that privacy even existed. Obviously, I knew that, we use personal data. What I didn't know at the time was I didn't know that there was legislation associated with how you could process personal data. I did not know that. Most of the insight that I had, and maybe I can give a bit more background, I studied law in England. And when you study law in England, and maybe people that studied in the US can talk about their experiences as well. When you study law, there are some foundational pieces of law that you have to learn, and data privacy is not one of them. And I don't think at the time they even had a elective option for us to pick data privacy to study at school. But the foundational ones that you learn are like, you learn European Union law in England because we were part of the European Union law when I went to law school. You learn property, land, criminal, you learn all of these like very foundational ones, but they don't really give you like, if they have electives, and I'll tell you about some of the electives that I did. I did human rights law as an elective, corporate and company law. Those were my choices at the time. But I don't think data privacy was offered, and I would be interested if the university that I went to offers data privacy now, because it's very important, but not anything that I'd heard of before that. So that's why I picked to do the CIPPUS in 2019. So after working in the privacy space for a little bit over a year, I chose to do the CISSP exam. Now let me explain why. And I took this in 2021. I did the CISSP exam because I think at the time there was a lot of discussion about more influence on cybersecurity. So the privacy landscape has continued to evolve. Most organizations that I think I was working with or providing privacy professional expertise at the time, there was a lot of overlap with cybersecurity and privacy at the time. So privacy has become its own program, but in 2021, I think that many companies were still building out their privacy program. They had a security program. They wanted to definitely protect their asset, but they didn't have much of a privacy program. So a lot of work between the privacy pros and security pros overlap. Now, if you're familiar with any of the privacy legislation, you know about something called the Technical and organizational measures. As part of our work as privacy pros, we also review technical and organizational measures and make sure that they're in place to protect the personal data. So my recollection from 2021 is that the reason I took the CISSP is because a lot of the work I was doing overlapped with the security team at the time. Okay, let's talk about 2022. So in 2022, I took the CDPSE exam. The CDPSE exam is offered by ISACA, and it's a privacy engineer exam. The reason why I chose to do the engineer exam in 2022 is because, again, there was a lot of influence from the security team. I also feel like I took the CDPSE exam because a lot of the privacy work that I was doing at the time required me to have very technical understanding of privacy processes. At this time, there was still that overlap with the security team. So I truly think that the reason I chose this particular exam, although it does mention some areas of like interpreting of laws, it really focuses on the engineering component. And I felt like at the time I needed to be able to understand what the security team was talking about and product team too. So if you are brand new to privacy, personal data affects every single business unit within an organization. So as a privacy pro, most of the time you're going to be talking to everybody within the organization in my capacity. So as a lawyer, I'm talking to product team, marketing, sales. I talk to everybody because every business unit uses personal data. But as part of that, you need to be able to understand what product companies are building. And sometimes it requires a level of understanding from a technical perspective about the data flow. You need to be able to understand the data lifecycle. And at the time, I felt like this was the area that I needed more knowledge on, which is why I took the CDPSE. In 2023, I took the CIPM exam. So the CIPM exam is a privacy manager exam. It's offered by International Association of Privacy Professionals again. And so I took the privacy manager exam because this is a number of years later, but a lot of organizations did have a privacy program. And then what they were looking to do was to build out the operations. So the operations is things like it could be a number of different things, but operations is essentially what happens is the privacy lawyers will interpret the law. And then as part of that, they will tell business units what you must do. The operations side is basically putting that into effect. So let's say, for example, a product team is building let's just say baby monitor, and the baby monitor is going to process information related to the baby. So the legal team is going to say, hey, if you are going to process information on children, you need to have parental consent. The operations side of that and view of that is making sure that the appropriate privacy notices are being drafted to reflect the obligations under the law. That's the operations side. If a parent has a concern or question about the privacy practices of the business providing that baby monitor, then they'll reach out and submit something called a data subject access request. The fulfillment of that data subject access request is going to come from privacy operations side. So I wanted to be able to understand every single component of the privacy program, not just the legal component piece. And that is why I took the CIPM exam in 2023. Let's talk about 2024. So more and more so, US organizations in 2024, as far as I was concerned and what I was seeing from a privacy landscape, they're very interested in their obligations in the European Union. So they had already started to build privacy programs in the United States and look at obligations in the US, because at that time we've had many US state privacy laws. We have the federal privacy laws, we have industry privacy laws. So organizations are now trying to understand their obligations outside the US. So I took the CIPPE exam in 2024 in order to be able to ensure that I was looking at privacy from a whole organization perspective, not just obligations in the United States if products are going to be offered in the European Union and in other geographies, because the GDPR as it currently stands is probably one of the most restrictive data protection laws currently available. And so businesses had additional obligations if their products and services were going to be offered outside the United States. Now let's talk about 2025. 2025, I took the AIGP exam. So the reason I took the AIGP exam is because towards the beginning of 2025, there was a lot of discussion related to artificial intelligence. Now, although artificial intelligence is not the same thing as personal data, they are different arenas. But again, because personal data touches on every single area of the business, if an organization is going to be rolling out artificial intelligence, there is going to be a privacy component associated with that rollout. Because if the AI is going to test on personal data, ingest personal data, or provide an output associated with personal data, then AI is going to be influenced. And any type of AI policy or AI notice that is distributed needs to be reviewed by privacy. So that's why I took that exam. So you can see the evolution of why I've taken each exam and the order in which I've taken it. And if you have the opportunity to watch my video about privacy certification stacking, every single year I am forced, and I force myself to strategize based on insights I receive from just looking on the internet and insights that I receive on questions that I'm receiving from businesses about how they can manage their privacy program. So I hope you enjoyed this evolution video. If you have questions about my journey with privacy, take a look at the description below and I will see you in another video.